All right, let's get into the story before we get too late in the show. Big day of strike action today by nurses, but whilst that's happening, we're also being told by the government that there's more cuts to come. It feels like, and I think in the story they actually say it, the nurses are actually saying, I don't really care about the money anymore. We just need this done correctly for our patients, which is a very generous, I mean, I don't think anyone goes into nursing to become wealthy. It's a very generous way to look at it. So let's have a look as to what the striking's all about.
As thousands of nurses hit the picket line today, Te Whatu Ora Health New Zealand confirmed cost cutting will continue till 2027. The agency released its annual plan this year, showing a deficit of $722 million in the last financial year. So what does this mean for the country's health services?
Sorry, I just got to say again, remember, just never forget, when we hear about a deficit, right, when we hear about this public agency not sticking within its budget, what we're hearing is the government did not give this place enough money. Because remember, the budget that they set, the amount of money they have is all decided by the government. And so to look at it and going, they're not living within their means, what they're saying is they're not living within the arbitrary amount of money that we placed on them. And remember, in the health system, where is that money going? Hip operations, nurses, care in hospital. So what they're saying is they've spent more than we've allotted them. On what? They're not buying ivory back scratchers. We're short on doctors, we're short on nurses, and we're not getting through enough operations already. So all they're saying, but basically what they're saying is we're not funding them enough. Yes, Chewy.
Maybe it's not in our best interests to have more older people with bad hips walking around because of reasons. Like they should stay home. They should just sit in a comfy chair and try not to move around too much.
Well,
maybe
success.
They need to think of the country.
Well done. Shorter lines at the post office. Yep, that's what we are. National 2026.
Oh, wouldn't that be
Miller
good?
has more details and reaction.
Nurses out en masse calling for help.
That's a pretty big protest for a group of workers. I mean, you know what I'm saying? That's a pretty big protest.
Bosses to listen.
We are fighting for safe staffing in our hospitals.
We don't have nurses. How can we properly care for people?
Pay is almost irrelevant at this point. We want our patients to be safe.
Te Whatu Ora says,
I mean, they're in it for themselves. She's literally saying, well, okay, screw our money, but let's at least fund this well enough that our patients are safe. I mean, come on.
It is listening and urges the nurses back to the negotiating table.
Really important that we hear concerns because nurses are the backbone of hospitals and we want to be able to satisfy.
It's funny how they treat the backbone like an asshole though, eh? It's unfortunate.
Boom, zinger.
Their conditions.
While the agency has credited its comprehensive program of cost reduction for reducing its initial forecast $1.76 billion deficit, it still has to fill a $1.1 billion hole in the next financial year.
Ultimately, these cuts are irresponsible and are going to hurt the health system. I think they were reckless from the beginning, and that's due to the fact that the health system wasn't funded adequately.
The government has to be really clear. It has to choose between cost cutting or meeting patient and whānau need.
The health minister says he's made his expectations clear.
Sorry, I'm just kind of watching this thinking, at what point are we going to say $3 billion to landlords and $14 billion of tax cuts? Is that going to come up at any stage? Are we going to talk about that? I'll find a space somewhere to mention that. We're not mentioning it yet, but I'm sure we'll find a space somewhere that these guys could find their fucking $1.1 billion.
I expect them to meet the budget projections that they have put to us. That's my expectations.
The budget projections, which is an arbitrary number that we set. And we've set it too low, so they have to cut.
To do so with clinical safety and good patient outcomes.
We would always look at not compromising clinical care to live within our means.
But there are questions over how, as the health agency's own report shows, demand on its services continues to rise. More than 1.3 million people visited an emergency department in the last year, up 50,000 on the year prior, and wait times have also increased. Primary services that could help divert patients away from hospitals also struggling with the lack of public investment.
There is no doubt that if you invest in primary care and general practice that you will reduce what goes on in hospitals. It's about prevention. It's about making sure that people can be seen quickly and that their health conditions are not left to languish.
Hospital nurses fearful there are grim days ahead.
At the moment, we're training student nurses to go and work in Australia.
But as nurses, we come to work every day not knowing if the ward is going to be safe for us to work on.
I am so worried about the future.
Where they'll simply be asked to do even more with even less.
I mean, come on. They're asking for a safe workspace. Do you notice all of these messages? They're not about, well, we're not getting paid. They're asking for a safe workplace for them and a safe space when it comes to healing for their patients. That's what they're asking for. And this government's response is, there's going to be cuts through till 2027. I mean, come on. This could be the end of it, I'll just say.
Corazon Miller.
It is the end of it. There's another part I want to play about this, Chewy, because Mr. Luxon ended up having a sit down with Mikey Sherman, which follows on from this. But before we have that 2-minute story or 2.5-minute story, your initial thoughts.
Yeah, look, the story today about cuts to the health system going on till 2027. My first and honest reaction was, I don't think this country can sustain what this government is doing for another 3 years, let alone till 2027. It's sabotage. We're already seeing the effects. As mentioned in that story, wait times in A&E departments are heading up. You know, we have less staff to cover wards. And I think that key aspect of they're talking about safety. Nurses administer medication that if it's wrong, if it's in the wrong quantity or the wrong drug, will kill people. Tired nurses doing that sort of work or receiving instructions from equally tired doctors will lead to deaths. And that is on Shane Retty's head, and that is on Luxton's head. And we're already seeing it. We're seeing the pointy end right now. Rotorua, patient dies in emergency department after a 3-hour wait. Patient who died in the waiting room of Rotorua's hospital emergency department last month had been waiting 3 hours to be seen. Distressed staff say that she should have been seen within an hour, but the department was critically short-staffed.
Fucking hell.
That is... like, there's no grey in that. That is all very black and white.
So that is, right, and I don't mean this to judge, particular countries in the world, but that is banana state republic. That is third world country outcomes. So under this government, the health system is becoming a third world entity. And they're talking about us like we're first world because, Mr. Luxon, good salesman, so he says.
At this point, the only thing that you could say as a positive was at least it happened inside the building and not in the car park. Oh, just 2 weeks earlier, that emergency room staff had written to management flagging their worries over excessive wait times. So it's not like this is like, oh, we couldn't have predicted this. It's being predicted.
Yeah, and as Rachel says here, like, I know it's not quite as black and white as this, but the thing about all the politicians, would they be going to the emergency department and wait for 10 hours or not? I'm suspecting not. This has always been the way for politicians. I remember I was one of the first group of people that went through university that had to start paying, because it used to be free. And then we started paying. And there was always a thing that stuck in our craw that all the people who went to university for free were fucking sitting in Wellington telling me I had to pay to go to university. Yeah. And it's like all these guys who don't have to particularly worry about the public health system are the guys who are screwing over the public health system. It's just disgusting.
Here's another example. Cardiac patient dies while lab in Dunedin Hospital was down. Person died in the cardiac unit while hospital staff were waiting for life-saving equipment to be repaired. Does that sound like a first world healthcare system? They've been waiting over a week for a critical part, and someone has died because of it.
I hear those stories, right? It's like when you hear the story of someone being killed at a workplace through negligence and stuff. And those are the moments for a half second, I split, oh, fuck, I wish we could sue like they do in America. And then I go, oh, that would be terrible. But, you know, like if there is a culpability as to why that person died in Dunedin Hospital based around the DHB's decision, based around the government's funding, then there should be some culpability for that. But like we're giving away our right to sue with ACC, and if you do sue, like if it is a workplace, there was one I think the other day for $500,000. It doesn't go to the family; it goes into the consolidated fund. So anyway,
look, this is an issue that really does get under my skin. My sister is a nurse here in Dunedin, and I see how hard she works, and I see how tired she is all of the time.
Mm-hmm.
She is my example of receiving emails saying your leave balance is too high, you need to take leave, and then having every leave application declined because they don't have coverage.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Hey, let's get to the second part of this conversation because this does go on. This bit ran straight after the other bit, and there was a conversation between Mikey Sherman and this ginormous thumb on why the health department is the most challenging area for the government.
The government is now under pressure to make good on an election promise after Nationals pledged to help nurses and midwives with student loan repayments. Political editor Mikey Sherman sat down with Christopher Luxon for an end-of-year chat and quizzed the Prime Minister on the promise.
As nurses rally across the country, the Prime Minister admits the health sector is the Coalition's biggest concern.
Just on health,
yes.
Would you say that's the most challenging portfolio of them all at the moment?
Yeah, I think that's probably a fair comment. I mean, it is a complex system. It has 85,000 people that work in it. It's been a really botched merger of the DHBs.
Blame Labour.
Last year, during the nursing shortage, National made an election promise, offering new and recently registered nurses and midwives up to $4,500 a year towards student loan repayments, which would be $22,500 each over 5 years.
Now remember, team, one of the things we will do is judge this government by how they judge the last government, the standards they set, and for the standards they set for themselves. This was an election promise, Chewy. $22,000 over 5 years. $4,500, yes, over 5 years. And what's happening now, Chewy? Guess what? They're not standing by it.
Are you intending on keeping that promise?
Well, we'll continue to look at that, but what has changed in the last year, just to give you a feel for it, is there are two.
Is we gave away, there's my space. We gave away $3 billion to landlords. I knew it would come, and $14 billion in tax cuts. Yeah, I knew we'd find it.
We'll continue to look at that, but what has changed in the last year, just to give you a feel for it, is there are 2,900 full-time equivalent nurses in the system extra.
But you're not giving any firm.
I can't give you a firm commitment around timing, but I can say that issue, that program is still something that Shane Reddy will work his way through.
Nurses are worried it's yet another.
Remember what we say about Luxon when he started to stammer and stutter? There was a lot of it at the end of that. The stammering, stuttering, I think, being someone who thinks he's a pretty good poker player, is when he's doesn't know what to say, doesn't have the answer, or is lying.
A firm commitment around timing, but I can say that issue, that program is still something that Shane Reddy will work his way through.
Nurses are worried it's yet another blow as they already face not having enough available jobs.
I mean, look, these nurses are so hard up at the moment, they can't even make proper signs. That's like a toilet roll holder on a piece of cardboard. That's how hard up these nurses are. They can't even get a bit of wood to hold their sign up. And if anyone knows about wood, it's certainly Chewy or something. I don't know. Keep going.
Available jobs.
It's another broken promise, and it's showing the level of disrespect that this current government has.
It's still a live proposal on the table as to when it gets action and how it does.
How quickly will that happen?
He'll work his way through that. Well, right now there's some other more pressing issues that we have to deal with in healthcare, like
it's going to destroy the rest of the country.
Philip Morris needing some money back, like have I mentioned landlords? I haven't mentioned. I don't know if that fits so well in here. But what he's actually saying,
we've got to underwrite the fuel, the oil exploration companies. They want our oil, and they want the government to pay them to get it out so they can make profit on it, and they want the government to carry the can for when they fuck up the environment doing it.
Yeah,
even
if they don't find
insane.
it.
Shane Jones is considering that.
Just remember when Winston last week said he was struggling, and then he kind of walked it back going, well, he's new to this game. What he was saying is, you're not qualified for the job. So you imagine a boss taking over a team and having to learn the role on the job. That means when he was employed, he wasn't qualified for the job. So that's what Winston said last week. When you say that quite a bit out loud, what Luxon's saying now, he says there's other priorities. What he's saying to all of you nurses is, you're not my priority. He's literally saying that. There are other priorities. So we are not going to prioritize these people, like Chewy's talking about his sister, who are working themselves to the bone, not getting enough sleep, not being able to take holidays, desperately needing them and being told they need to take them. You don't matter to me right now. You're not the priority. Listen to it again.
He'll work his way through that. Well, right now, there's some other more pressing issues that we have to deal with in healthcare, like actually get Health New Zealand to a high-performing state, get the funding through, get the cancer drugs out the door.
Next year, this term, though?
Again, I'll leave that for him to work through.
I think there's a significant amount of our student nurses who will be leaving to Australia as soon as they possibly can.
Luxon says his coalition is working well.
You'd be happy to work with ACT and New Zealand First in another coalition in the future? Yeah,
I mean, as I said, it's been working. I enjoy working with both parties. They different leaders, different personalities, but we work in a very...
Yeah, notice all the stammering again, team? I mean, I can't say that's for absolutely sure, but it feels to me that the time he gets stuck, not knowing what to say or needing to exaggerate or lie, this stammer comes out, like I was just doing then.
Very constructive, very positive way.
With its first year under its belt, the focus for the coalition is clear for 2025.
Really what we want to see over the course of next year is actually economic growth, because that's the thing that powers up jobs. We want to see good progress on education, because that sets up our long-term future. And we want to see investment in infrastructure, because we know that that's one of the things that actually can lift our standard of living for everybody.
1 year down, 2 to go. Mikey Sherman, One Year.
Other thing that could lift our cost of living is funding the health department or the health system better, could literally let people live longer. That would increase our living situation, wouldn't it? Like literally living.
Two questions for our bollock tongue and chief there. Would infrastructure be new hospitals? Would that be infrastructure?
I guess so.
And if you did do that infrastructure, do you need people to work in it? Do you realise what nurses do? Now, look, anecdotally, this absolutely plays in with Luxon's worldview of how things work. When he ran an airline, you might not be aware of this, Pat.
Did he run an airline?
Yeah.
Oh, really? Which airline did he run?
I don't know, just probably a small puddle jumper, but might have been the national flag carrier of this country.
Didn't know that.
His attitude towards flight crew and cabin crew was very, very different. Because pilots are important. The majority of them are men. They make the planes go. Very important. But why would you waste time with hearing pay and condition concerns about the people that actually keep the plane's passengers happy?
Yeah.
Because they're all women, mostly women. So we can safely disregard their opinion. His attitude towards them was very, very clear, and you can find stories about what went on during that pay negotiations and how their representatives were spoken to. And I think that carries on to what he thinks of our nurses and how our hospitals work. He's already decided who's important. It's not us, the users of the hospital. And it's not the nurses that do a lot of the heavy lifting in the hospital. It's not the people that clean the hospital. It's the people, like we can even disregard junior doctors. because they're not real cool. They don't have all the gear, the white coats, that sort of thing. The doctors that are going to work in the private hospitals, they're the gold mine. Let's listen to them.